My name is Brooks Adams. I'm the Enterprise Sales Director at Co-Enterprise. And today we're bringing you a presentation entitled Bringing Blueprint to Action. My co-presenter, one of our marquee customers, is Nationwide. One of the leaders of their analytics department is Erin Ham. She'll be co-presenting and essentially walking you through how they're adopting Blueprint internally at a large, complex organization with varied resources, multiple business groups, and bringing aspects of Blueprint to action, specifically community. So I'm going to introduce her in a minute. Let me explain to you real quick who Co-Enterprise is. Co-Enterprise is a Tableau Gold partner. We're headquartered in New York with consultants, almost 100, located everywhere. We're the 2017 Services Training Partner of the Year. Every year we vie for Partner of the Year at Tableau. We're also a Salesforce Consulting Partner. We're also an Alteryx Partner. We're also IBM B2B Partner of the Year. So essentially what we do is we empower enterprise customers to become data-driven and enable self-service analytics inside their organizations. Our two core specialties at Co-Enterprise that we help clients like Nationwide with are one, executing Tableau Blueprint. So we've aligned all of our services to the successful execution of Blueprint within your organization. Featuring today Nationwide on how they're doing that specifically within community. Our second core focus is deep Salesforce and Tableau integration. So we are a Salesforce consulting partner, and just beyond embedding dashboards into your Tableau UI, we also have a deep integration to connect the two. So those were two of the key components you may have heard at some of the keynotes, and those are our two core specialties. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Erin. As I mentioned, she is a co-chair of the Columbus Tug. She is a leader of the analytics practice at Nationwide. She is a board member of the Franklin Data Advisory Council.
Masters of Data Analytics and Business Analytics.
Masters of Data Analytics and Business Analytics. And lastly, she is the champion of the Center of Excellence at Nationwide. So a complex position for a complex organization, and they are executing Blueprint flawlessly, building community in their organization. Without further ado, let me turn it over to Erin Ham.
Awesome. Well, we were actually introduced to Blueprint in about March of 2019 this year. When we first got started with Blueprint, we were executing on portions of Blueprint, but we never had a documentation and a strategy deck that was put together and said, hey, these are the key initiatives that we wanted to focus on. So when we had Tableau, our sponsors, come in and Co-Enterprise, we identified that our community, we were not doing so hot in. Same thing with Proficiency and Agility. We had started it, but as you went down the pipeline, we were getting worse and worse. So what we did is we tried to focus on what our key areas were for 2019. So we created what was called the Center of Excellence following that meeting with Tableau. So in March, it was introduced to us. In May, we decided, okay, we have this Center of Excellence. It's roughly 10 to 12 people that sit in various business units within the enterprise, as well as within IT and our server governance team. And we said, what do we want our key initiatives to be? We identified those in May. So our key initiatives is by June, we wanted to launch our Tableau user group SharePoint site. By September, we wanted to roll out a Proficiency strategy, which was a beginner Tableau course. In October, we wanted to focus on increasing our speed and updating our versioning. So previously, our department was, I would say, roughly 6 to 8 versions behind what Tableau was actually on. And individuals in our company would say, hey, I want this new feature. And we're like, we'll get it to you in a year. Hold on up on that. So we wanted to figure out how we could increase speed to market for our customers. And then lastly, in November, we wanted to enhance our monitoring and maintenance by the year end. So our key pillar that we wanted to focus on was community. Within community, there's 3 pillars that you can focus on. communications, engagement, and support. So when we were going through identifying what areas we had opportunities in, we asked ourselves questions like, how are we communicating to our members and non-members? Because it's not just about the developers or the people that are viewing the dashboards, it's about building a community to drive a data culture. Engagement, how often are you hosting meetings for members and non-members, people that are developers, people that are server admins, beginners to advanced levels? And then support, do you have champions identified within your organization who you can go to, and if you have a question, whether it's IT-based or server-based or visualization best practices, do you have those individuals identified and say, I can go to Paul if I have a question over this, and they're willing to answer that for you. So the first thing we focused on was communications. So we had 3 key platforms that we use to communicate to our members and non-members. Yammer, so think of Yammer as a Twitter or Reddit, or I'm not sure what the other ones would be, but it's basically a communication platform where you can post a question and other individuals within the enterprise can answer that question for you. We have a response time in that of anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes to about a day, depending on how complex that question is. Sometimes it's just a matter of pointing you to the correct resource, or it's actually digging in and trying to figure out why is that workbook not performing the way that they want it to perform. Secondly, we created an email distribution. So we had a Tableau SharePoint site previously, and that's where people would go in and they would say, I want to join your SharePoint and your email distribution. That didn't always connect with the emails that we were sending out. So we created an email distribution, and we are proud to say that we are up to 900 people that are on that email distribution that are getting emails twice a month, focusing on content development as well as best practices that we're trying to roll out across the enterprise. And then lastly, we created a new Tableau user group site. So one of the key marks of Tableau Blueprint is they actually give you the framework of how to execute on a great SharePoint site. So they give you the enablement internet, and then they say, okay, what are the key pillars within that you want to execute on? It's the user dictionary, education, blog, events, content, best practices, frequently asked questions. Before we were introduced to Tableau Blueprint, we were actually executing on building a SharePoint site. And what was good to know is a lot of the concepts from that diagram, we were actually able to execute in our SharePoint site. So this is the one that we've developed. And as you can see, we have our conversations that people post answers to, all of the different user groups that are hosted within Nationwide. Right there you can figure out what version we are on the server, as well as if anyone wants to speak at any of our events, we have a call for speakers, a call to action. If you want to help enable a data-driven culture and you have great concepts that would be widespread across the organization, we want to call on you to help drive that change. And then lastly, we have our events calendar. And within our events calendar, we don't just put Nationwide specific events. We put webinars that Tableau's hosting, user groups that are within our city, so the Columbus Tableau user group. Or if there's a blog or something that's coming up or some type of happy hour that might have value, we put that on there for our members. And then we send them that information out, so if they want to attend, they can. Engagement. So within engagement, we have 3 pillars that we try to focus on. So the first one is the Visualization Center of Excellence. That was created after our conversation with Tableau in March. So our Visualization Center of Excellence consists of people from all across the business. And what they're there to do is they're there to enable associates across the enterprise to help influence our BI culture and our analytics strategy. Within our Center of Excellence, we host what's considered monthly doctor days. So very similar to the doctor clinics that you can go at Tableau, we host those once a month, not just over Tableau, but over all of our BI tools. So even if you're having an issue with data prep, not just data visualization, we have expertise in the room that can answer your questions from start to finish on data prep, visualization, and automation. And then the user groups. So the user groups are one thing that we tried to focus heavily on this year. Previously, our user groups were always focused on one skill level or one concept every month. And it's like, that's very repetitive. We want to be able to change it up and have our members be engaged. So how do we do that? So what we did is we created events that focus on varying skill levels. We have a user group that's specific to IT, a user group that's specific to server admins, another group that's specific to people that are trying to work towards that JEDI or desktop professional certificate, and then those who are just beginning their journey. And along with that, we also have meetings that are tailored for everyone in the enterprise. So server best practices should not just be something that the server team is executing on. It's something that everyone should be executing on. So we try to vary our content day in and day out when we host these user groups. And we recently changed the format. Previously, when we were hosting our user groups, it was just learning. And then once we taught you what we wanted to taught you, we shipped you off on your way. We said that's not very engaging. How do we engage our customers? And so what we did is we followed learning with use cases with a doctor. So you could sign up when you walked into the room, or even if you were remote online, and say, hey, I have a question. You guys are presenting on this topic. I'm trying to execute on that. We would assign you a doctor following that session. That way, you've had questions, we were able to answer them right away. And then Tableau Tuesdays. So how many of you guys have heard of Makeover Monday? Perfect, a lot of people. So what we did is we stole that concept and we actually do it internal. And so one of our user groups is really focused on Makeover Monday, but done internally. So then versus now. The people that started Tableau Tuesdays, it was a team of one to three associates, I think. And what they focused on was building specific chart types. But that's not really what Makeover Monday is about. So we said, how can we make this more like Makeover Monday? So we now have associates all across the enterprise that can go out there and say, hey, we're doing the Makeover Monday data set from last week. They can look at Tableau Public and say, here's some ideas to figure out how I want to design my dashboard. And it's focusing on creativity and time management. So the photos that you see on the left are from James Lane and Eric Rittman. They are two associates who have been in Tableau Tuesdays from the very start. As you can see, it's very basic charts. They got their message across on the left-hand side, but on the right-hand side, they got more creative. And then as a note, the Eric Rittman, so the Most Americans Favor the Fall, that was actually chosen as a Makeover Monday winner. So it's not just about internal recognition, it's also pushing these to Tableau Public and getting your audience and members of the community engaged with external customers as well. So you're no longer just helping your company, you're helping develop the culture of analytics across the Tableau platform. And support is a key thing. So we have executive sponsors. Our executive sponsor is our Chief Data Officer. So if we have questions or any problem we run into, we can go to our executive sponsor and he's the champion for us. And he will pride and parade across the organization to try to get us what we need. Now, the one good thing about our executive sponsor is he's engaged. So there's a difference between having an engaged executive sponsor versus an unengaged executive sponsor. If you have an executive sponsor, you want to make sure that they're engaged, because if they're not engaged, they're not going to be able to get you the material that they need. We also have support from our Enterprise Data Office Data Advisory Services, and then our Tableau resources. So our customer success managers, our sales executives, and then our Tableau partners like Co-Enterprise. So one of the sayings that I live by is data is the lifeblood of an organization, and the execution of a data set strategy is critical to building a data-centric culture. So how many people have a data strategy? A few. What's tough is executing on that strategy. So I was at an event a while back and there was a joke that was presented and it said, a man found a lamp. So he rubbed that lamp, it was a magic lamp, out popped a genie. And the genie said, I can grant you a wish. What do you want? He said, I want a road from California to Hawaii. The genie goes, that's too hard. What else can I get you? He said, I want an analytics strategy. The genie said, 1 lane or 2. Like, can't get that. So even though you have a strategy, you have to be able to execute on that. So in order to execute on that, one of the key steps that you need is proficiency. So the key pillars of proficiency are education, measurement, and analytics best practices. So very similar to the questions we asked around community, we ask around education. Does your organization have any formal training? Informal training? Are they utilizing any type of skills belt or assessment to formally gauge the skills of levels across the organization? Do you have a central repository of Tableau server, visual, and best practices? We're doing okay in those areas. So what we decided is our education we were going to incorporate into our monthly user groups. So what we did is we no longer had user groups that were siloed in their own business units. We brought everything together. And then we incorporated it into an established learning platform. So we have something called Teaching Thursdays, and it's an IT platform where anyone in the IT organization has 2 hours every Thursday dedicated to learning. So what we did is we put our sessions now on every Thursday during those 2 hours. So now we're reaching out to members that aren't using Tableau, but they might be able to use it to help upskill their organization. And what this does is it helps fill the voids across all the subway stops, not just one. Another thing that we did is we created the Beginner Tableau course. So this was a 4-day, 8-hour course focused on Tableau for beginners. So what is Tableau? Why is visual analytics important? How do I design a dashboard? So we walked them through that entire process. And what we did is we utilized the Skills Belt in a Box program. It's a great way to start kick-starting your initiatives within this area. We're currently working on an intermediate Tableau course as well as an advanced Tableau course. And we're leveraging the Skills Belt in a Box program to create those. And these are going to be both in-person training as well as fully online. So we're engaging everyone based on their learning styles. Measurement. So for measurement, we're still working on this. Right now, the way that we're measuring success or skill levels within our organization is certification exams. Are you a desktop qualified associate? Professional? Are you helping give back to our community and our members? Leveraging the Skills Belt in a Box program. So the Skills Belt in a Box program actually allows you to go through all the way from their Star Wars terms, and I don't watch Star Wars, so I don't know all of them, but like a Padawan to a Jedi Master, I believe. But what we're doing is we're customizing that to our own organization. So it's not just any random data set that Tableau provided. We're taking nationwide specific data that's been certified and available to everyone and putting it in that program to make it more realistic to our end users. And then a COE member. So our COE members help guide the principles and practices for Tableau and other BI tools for our organization. So we say if you are driving change within your team or within your business unit, we want you to sit on our COE board. That way we can help push that ideas not just within your centralized silo, but all across the entire enterprise. And then the last thing we focused on within this area was the analytics best practices. So we took the best practices document that was provided from Tableau and we said, this is great. So we focused on why visual analytics. So leveraging pre-attentive attributes, design theory, where can you go for resources if you need help trying to figure out how to design a dashboard. And then visual best practices, chart choices, layout, color, formatting, interactivity, thinking about your audience members. If you're communicating to an executive versus a business analyst, how should you communicate that material because it's different? And then server best practices. So permissions and roles, performance testing, report curation, so an extract versus a live, what does that mean? Steps to production release. So we actually have created a checklist that if someone wants to put something on our production server, they have to go through this checklist, get it certified, and then it can move from our test environment to our production environment. If that report has not been viewed within 180 days, it gets removed. So we're no longer having stale content onto our server. We're able to keep only the content that matters, which helps improve performance. And then what we also focused on is scheduling procedures and cadences. So how do you schedule? What's the best cadence? Are you hitting directly to a database? Are you pulling it down from somewhere else and then scheduling it? We walk through all the best practices of those. And then report governance. What credentials do you need to have to be able to log into this report? Does it need to be locked down to a specific user or a specific business unit? And questions surrounding those to help guide the users. But one thing specific that we did is we put in roadblocks. So every organization has roadblocks that they'll come across when they're talking about Tableau or implementing any type of BI tool. We wanted to include that in our best practices document. a lot of people were having issues connecting AWS to our Tableau server environment. So they were finding all these workarounds, but not every workaround was the best way to do it. So we said, okay, what is the best way? Once we figured out what that best way was, it went into our best practices, and I believe roughly 75% of people now are using that way to connect AWS to our Tableau platform. And then training. So that 4-hour class that we talked about and the development of the intermediate and advanced classes, they live within this best practices document. So they'll link you to the beginner, intermediate, advanced, and give you a brief synopsis, kind of like a course syllabus, of what information is going to be housed in there. And then resources. So who can you reach out to for server questions, user group questions, whatever they may be, and as well as links to external areas such as Yammer, our Tableau utilization dashboard, the nationwide Tableau user group, Columbus Tableau user group, and as well as Tableau. So this is all well and good. You have your strategy, you know your key initiatives, but how do you enable analytics? The first thing you do is data storytelling. So data can tell any story that you want, but what you need to do is you want to ensure you let the data tell the story. You don't want to fit the data to the story that you want it to tell because your executive says, I need this number to say it's going up, so fit the data to make sure it says it's going up. What we want to do is you want to make sure you let the data tell a story, because then you can actually start making practical business decisions. So there's a good video that I found, and hopefully you get a laugh out of it, but it actually talks about data storytelling and the importance of it.
Just thought you might want to know, sales aren't up, they're down. Yes, sir.
Want a new job?
So, make sure you let the data tell the story. If not, you're going to be celebrating when you probably shouldn't be. So, you have this strategy, but strategy doesn't always mean implementation. So how do you create this strategy that can then be implemented? You make it personable. You drive accountability. You focus on key deliverables over a certain period of time. So we didn't say we want to do all of this in 1 year. We need to do it now because all of these areas we're lacking in. No, we said what areas are key to us? What do we need to focus on first? We have 6 months, 9 months to do this. Then we'll move to our next key initiative and then to our next. And we can change those throughout. So if we're not hitting a specific target, or if we blow one of our targets out the water, we can move those initiatives up. And track your progress. The reason you want to track your progress is because if you have an area where you were severely lacking, and you can now say, I went from 600 members to 900 members, and we have 400 more dashboards that have been put on our server because of that, your executives are going to be like, wow, how did you do that? Let's talk over here. So I like to think of it as the house model. So with this house model, you have your vision. That's going to be your roof, what you want it to look like. And then you have your value add areas. So those are going to be your structure, your foundation. So the key areas in Tableau are agility, proficiency, and community. The two that we focused on were proficiency and community. So in order to drive this down further, we said, okay, we want to do proficiency. How do we do that? Well, that's done by education. So that's why we created that education class for beginners. Then we had KPIs and projects. So our KPIs are the exams that people can get. So whether or not you're certified, or if you're going through the Skills Belt program. And then our projects, so the beginner course. Did you actually go through that beginner course? And are you able to do actions from that? So it's not just about going through the course, it's about being able to drive action and accountability following that, showing that you actually learned something. So our milestones. So in March, we had Tableau Blueprint introduced to us. So that was focused on our strategy development. In May, we identified what our key initiatives were. In June, we created the Tableau user group site. So this is where we started implementing our strategy. September, our Tableau course launched. And then in November, we were supposed to have increased monitoring and maintenance and the ability to push the information out to our audience sooner. So even though we didn't hit every key initiatives, we still hit the majority of them. And that's okay, because we were able to see a spike in our attendance and change in our culture because of it. So the question is, where are we now? So I'm happy to say, since Blueprint was introduced to us, our community area is all green. Just because it is green doesn't mean there's not areas for improvement. There's always areas for improvement. But we're now in an area where we feel we're doing great. Our education and our analytics best practices are great. We're still lacking on measurement, and so those are the key initiatives that we're trying to focus on for next year. So measurement, monitoring, and maintenance. Those are our key deliverables that we're focusing on in the 2020 year. So now we'll go ahead and open it up to any questions that people may have.